The first ships appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning. They came without warning, without sound, sliding through the clouds like dark knives cutting through white cloth. People looked up from their phones, their coffees, their morning walks, and they saw things that should not exist. Massive vessels hung in the air above every major city on the planet. The world held its breath. In the command center, buried deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, Nomi watched the screens with calm eyes. She was not a soldier. She was not a politician. She was an engineer, the lead designer of Project Aegis, and she had spent 15 years building something that humanity hoped it would never need to use. Now, as the alien ships blocked out the sun over New York, London, Beijing, and 100 other cities, she understood that her life's work was about to be tested. "Dr. Nomi," said General Torres, his voice tight with barely controlled fear, "the Secretary General is asking for a timeline. When can we activate the shields?" Kala did not look away from the screens. "The shields are already active," she said quietly. "They have been active for 3 years. The satellites are in position. The ground stations are powered. We just need to bring them to full strength." Torres stared at her. 3 years, we didn't know. "That was the point," Kala said. She finally turned to face him and her dark eyes were steady. "If we announced it, someone would have tried to stop us. Some nation would have complained. Some corporation would have sued. Some politician would have called it a waste of money. So we built it in secret and we kept it secret, and now," she gestured at the screens, "now we will see if it was worth it." The aliens made contact an hour later. Their message was simple, transmitted in every language simultaneously, played on every screen and speaker on the planet. A voice, cold and mechanical, spoke words that chilled humanity to its core. "We are the Vreth Collective. Your planet has resources we require. Your species will be relocated. Resistance will result in extinction. You have 1 planetary rotation to begin evacuation procedures. This is not a negotiation." Panic spread across the world. People ran through the streets. Governments collapsed into emergency sessions. Military forces mobilized, knowing they had nothing that could touch ships capable of crossing the void between stars. Some people prayed. Some people screamed. Some people simply sat down and waited for the end. But in the command center, Nomi began to type. "Dr. Nomi," Torres said urgently. "What are you doing? We need to respond. We need to." "We need to wait," Kala said calmly. "Let them fire first. Let them show the world what they really are. Then we show them what we are." Torres looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Wait, they're going to destroy us." Kala stopped typing and met his eyes. "General, do you know how I got this job? I grew up in a village in Kenya where we had no electricity, no running water, nothing that the rich nations took for granted. But I watched the stars every night and I made a promise to myself. I promised that I would help humanity reach those stars, that I would protect the people I loved from anything that might stop us from getting there." She turned back to her console. "The Vreth Collective does not know who they are dealing with. They see a primitive species on a single world. They do not see what we have become when our backs are against the wall." The deadline passed. Humanity did not evacuate. How could they? 8 billion people had nowhere to go, no ships to take them, no other world to call home. The response came exactly as Kala had predicted. The first strike hit Moscow. A beam of light shot down from the lead Vreth ship, a lance of energy bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. It moved faster than any human weapon, faster than thought itself, carrying enough power to turn a city of 12 million souls into a crater of glass and ash. It never reached the ground. 3 kilometers above the city, the beam struck something invisible. The air itself seemed to ripple and shimmer, and then a dome of golden light flickered into existence, spreading outward from the point of impact. The energy of the Vreth weapon scattered across the dome's surface like water hitting a window, breaking apart into harmless sparks that faded into nothing. In the command center, every screen showed the same image. The shield held. Moscow stood untouched. Nomi smiled for the first time in 24 hours. "Now," she said quietly, "let them try again." The Vreth tried again, and again, and again. For 6 hours, they pounded Earth's shields with everything they had. Beams of concentrated energy, missiles that moved at impossible speeds, weapons that bent light itself, that created miniature black holes, that unleashed forces humanity had only theorized about in physics laboratories. Each attack crashed against the golden domes that now covered every population center on the planet, and each attack failed. In cities across the world, people stopped running. They stopped screaming. They gathered in the streets and looked up at the sky, watching the light show above them with wonder instead of terror. The shields flickered and pulsed with each impact, beautiful and terrible at the same time, but they did not break. In Tokyo, a little girl pointed at the golden dome above her and laughed. In Cairo, an old man fell to his knees and wept. In Sao Paulo, strangers embraced each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Humanity was still alive, and against all odds, humanity was fighting back. The Vreth commanders could not understand what they were seeing. Fleet Commander Vexus stood on the bridge of the flagship, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The display showed him things that should not be possible. A primitive species on a primitive world had somehow developed shield technology that exceeded anything the Vreth had encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. Species with twice the technological development had fallen in hours. This species should have been reduced to ashes within minutes. "Analysis," Vexus demanded, his voice cold with anger. "The shields appear to be based on quantum field manipulation," his science officer reported, her voice trembling slightly. "They are converting the energy of our weapons into harmless radiation. The technology is, Commander, the technology is beyond our understanding. We do not know how they built this." "Then we will find out," Vexus said. "Prepare the conversion beam. We will take prisoners and extract the information from them." In the command center beneath Switzerland, Kala watched the Vreth ships reposition themselves. She had been waiting for this. The shields could protect against energy weapons, against missiles, against almost anything the Vreth could throw at them from orbit. But there was one thing she was not certain about. "They're preparing something new," Tors said, looking at his own screens. "Our satellites are picking up a massive power buildup in their flagship." "I see it," Kala said. She was already typing again, her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced speed. "They're going to try a sustained beam. They think they can overwhelm the shields through brute force." "Can they?" Kala paused. It was a good question. The shields drew their power from a network of fusion reactors hidden beneath the Earth's surface, connected to the satellite grid through quantum-entangled links. The system could theoretically handle any amount of energy, but theory and reality were different things. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we're about to find out." The conversion beam fired. It was not a single lance of light like before. It was a river of fire, a continuous stream of energy that connected the Vreth flagship to the shield above Berlin. The golden dome blazed white under the assault, and for the first time it began to curve inward. Alarms began to sound in the command center. "Power draw increasing," one of Kala's technicians reported. "Reactor 7 is approaching critical output. Reactor 12 is showing stress fractures." Kala watched the numbers climb. The shield was holding, but barely. The Vreth had finally found something that could challenge her creation. She had anticipated this possibility, had built redundancies and failsafes into every system, but she had never been able to test them under actual combat conditions. "Dr. Nomi," Tors said urgently, "if the shield fails over Berlin—" "It won't fail," Kala said. Her voice was calm, but her heart was racing. She pulled up a new set of controls, systems she had never told anyone about, not even the Secretary General. "I built this shield system to protect humanity. Do you think I would build something that could be broken by a simple test of strength?" She entered a command code, and deep beneath the Antarctic ice, something ancient and powerful began to wake. The original Project Aegis had been designed to protect against asteroids and other natural threats. But Kala had always believed that humanity was not alone in the universe, and she had always believed that if other species existed, they might not be friendly. So she had built a second layer of defense, one that used power sources that humanity had not yet learned to fully control. Zero-point energy, the infinite power that existed in the empty spaces between atoms. Humanity had discovered it 50 years ago and had spent decades trying to harness it safely. Kala had succeeded where others had failed, but she had kept her success secret. The power was too great, too dangerous to be trusted to politicians and generals. Now she was going to use it. The shield over Berlin stopped bending. It began to push back. The golden light turned white, then blue, then a color that had no name in any human language. The Vreth conversion beam, the most powerful weapon in their arsenal, was being absorbed, converted, and reflected back at its source. On the bridge of the flagship, Fleet Commander Vexus watched in disbelief as his weapon's energy returned to strike his own ship. Alarms screamed. Fires erupted. Crew members died in their stations as systems overloaded throughout the vessel. "Cease fire," Vexus roared. "Cease fire immediately." The beam cut off. The shield over Berlin returned to its normal golden glow, but the damage was done. The Vreth flagship was crippled, trailing smoke and flames as it struggled to maintain altitude. In the command center, Nomi let out a long breath. That, she said quietly, was Phase 2. The Vreth Collective had conquered 417 worlds. They had defeated species with faster ships, better weapons, and more advanced technology. They had crushed empires that had lasted for millennia. In 3,000 years, they had never retreated from a target world. They were not going to retreat now. Fleet Commander Vexus transferred his flag to another vessel and ordered the full fleet to concentrate its fire on a single point. 47 ships focused their weapons on the shield above Tokyo, pouring enough energy into that single dome to vaporize a small moon. The shield blazed like a second sun, visible from space, lighting up the entire Pacific Ocean with its glow. In Tokyo, people were forced to look away. The light was too bright, too intense, even filtered through the protective dome above them. Children cried, adults huddled in doorways and basements, but the shield held. The shield always held. Kala watched the attack from her screens, her face pale but determined. The zero-point reactors were running at full capacity now, drawing power from the very fabric of spacetime itself. She had calculated that they could sustain this output for approximately 6 hours before the system began to degrade. After that, she would need to shut down for repairs. 6 hours. That was how long humanity had to survive. "We need to do something," Torres said. He was packing now, unable to stand still. "We can't just sit here and take this. We need to fight back." "With what?" Kala asked. "Our missiles can't reach their ships. Our jets would be destroyed in seconds. We have nothing that can hurt them." "Then what do we do? Just wait until the shields fail." Kala was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "There is one option, something I never thought I would have to use." Torres stopped packing. "What option?" Kala pulled up a new display on her screen. It showed a network of satellites in orbit around Earth, hundreds of small devices positioned in a precise geometric pattern. "When I designed the shield system, I also designed an offensive capability, a way to strike back if we were ever attacked. I called it Project Spear." Torres stared at the display. "You built weapons in secret." "I built tools," Kala corrected. "Tools that could be used as weapons if necessary. Each of those satellites contains a quantum field generator, similar to the ones that power the shields. But instead of creating a defensive barrier, they can create an offensive one, a blade of pure energy that can cut through anything." "Why didn't you tell anyone about this?" Kala's expression was sad. Because weapons are dangerous, General, not just to our enemies but to ourselves. If I had announced Project Spear, every nation on Earth would have demanded access. They would have fought over it. They might have used it against each other. The shields protect everyone equally. They don't care about borders or politics. But a weapon, she shook her head. A weapon always takes sides. Tors was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Can you use it now? Can you destroy the Vreth fleet?" "I can try," Kala said, "but there's a risk. If I divert power from the shields to the satellites, some areas will be temporarily vulnerable. The Vreth might break through." "How temporarily?" 30 seconds, maybe less. Tors looked at the screens, where the Vreth fleet continued its relentless assault on Tokyo. 30 seconds, he said quietly. A lot of people could die in 30 seconds. "A lot of people will die if we don't do something," Kala replied. "This attack can't last forever, but neither can our defense. Eventually, something will break. The only question is whether we break first or they do." The decision was not easy. Tors was a soldier, trained to protect civilian lives at all costs. Kala was an engineer, trained to solve problems with logic and calculation. Neither of them wanted to gamble with the lives of millions. But sometimes there are no good choices. Sometimes you can only choose between different kinds of bad. "Do it," Tor said finally. "Activate Project Spear." Kala nodded. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, entering command codes that only she knew. Around the world, 312 satellites began to realign themselves, their quantum field generators charging with energy drawn from the same zero-point sources that powered the shields. "Power diversion in 30 seconds, she announced. "All shield sections will experience a temporary reduction in output. Estimated vulnerability window, 27 seconds. In Tokyo, the shield flickered. The people below looked up in sudden fear, their brief moment of hope dissolving into terror. They didn't know what was happening. They didn't know that someone was trying to save them. All they knew was that the light above them was growing dim. Fleet Commander Vexus saw the fluctuation in the shields and seized his opportunity. "Increase power," he commanded. "All ships, maximum output. We're breaking through." The Vreth weapons blazed even brighter. The shield above Tokyo bent inward, its golden surface stretching like thin cloth under impossible pressure. Cracks of darkness appeared in the light. And then the satellites fired. 312 beams of pure energy lanced out from Earth's orbit, each one precisely targeted at a different Vreth ship. They moved at the speed of light, impossibly fast, impossibly accurate. The Vreth had no shields, no defenses, no warning. They had never needed them. In the space of a single heartbeat, the Vreth fleet ceased to exist. The silence that followed was absolute. On the screens in the command center, where moments ago there had been 47 alien warships, there was now only empty space and slowly dispersing clouds of debris. The beams from Project Spear had been so powerful, so precise, that not a single fragment of the Vreth fleet remained larger than a pebble. Nomi slumped back in her chair, exhaustion washing over her in waves. She had not slept in over 30 hours. She had not eaten in 12, but she had done it. She had protected her world. "Dr. Nomi," Tor said, his voice hushed with awe, Did we just win?" "We survived," Kala corrected wearily. "Winning implies something that's over. This is just the beginning." She was right, of course. The Vreth Collective had sent a single fleet to conquer Earth, expecting an easy victory against a primitive species. They had been wrong, but there were more fleets, more ships, more weapons in the depths of space. The Collective had conquered 417 worlds. They would not ignore the loss of 47 ships. But for now, for this moment, humanity was safe. In cities across the world, people emerged from their hiding places and looked up at clear skies. The golden domes were fading now, their energy no longer needed, returning to their invisible state above the cities they protected. Some people cheered. Some people cried. Some people simply stood in silence, unable to process what had happened. In Tokyo, the little girl who had laughed at the shields looked up at where the dome had been and waved goodbye. In Cairo, the old man who had wept rose to his feet and began to pray his thanks. In Sao Paulo, the strangers who had embraced each other exchanged names and phone numbers, promising to meet again. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They would never be the same. 3 days later, Nomi stood before the United Nations General Assembly. She was tired, she was scared, but she was also determined. The world needed to understand what had happened, what it meant, and what was coming. Distinguished delegates, she began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. 3 days ago, we learned that we are not alone in the universe. We learned that there are species out there who see us as nothing more than obstacles to be removed, resources to be exploited. We learned that the galaxy is not a friendly place. She paused, looking out at the faces of the world's leaders. We also learned something else. We learned that we are stronger than we knew. We learned that when humanity faces a common threat, we can put aside our differences and work together. We learned that the walls we build to protect each other are stronger than any weapon designed to destroy us. The Vreth Collective will return, she continued. They will bring more ships, more weapons, more determination. They have conquered hundreds of worlds. They will not accept defeat easily. But I am not afraid, because I have seen what humanity can do when our survival is at stake. I have seen our courage. I have seen our creativity. I have seen our refusal to surrender. She held up a small device, no larger than a coin. This is a quantum communicator. It is connected to a network that spans our entire solar system. In the past 3 days, I have been in contact with the teams I placed on Mars, on Europa, on Titan. Teams that have been building defenses of their own, preparing for threats that we always knew might come. We are no longer a species on a single world. We are a civilization that spans the stars. The assembly erupted in murmurs, secret bases on other worlds, secret teams working in silence for years. It was almost too much to believe. I kept these things secret, Kala admitted. I kept them secret because I feared what would happen if the world knew too soon. I feared that nations would fight over the technology, that corporations would try to control it, that politicians would use it for their own purposes. I was wrong to keep these secrets. I should have trusted humanity more. She lowered the communicator. But I am telling you now. I am offering you everything I have built, everything I have learned. The shields, the weapons, the bases on other worlds. They belong to all of humanity, not to any single nation or group. They were built to protect us all, and they will continue to protect us all. The Vreth called us a primitive species, she said, her voice rising with emotion. They thought we would run. They thought we would surrender. They thought we would be easy to conquer. They were wrong. We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived wars and disasters. We have survived everything the universe has thrown at us for 200,000 years. We will survive this too. The assembly hall was silent. Then, one by one, the delegates began to stand. They began to clap. The applause grew louder and louder, echoing off the walls of the chamber, spilling out into the streets where crowds had gathered to watch the speech on giant screens. In the command center beneath Switzerland, General Torres watched the speech with a small smile on his face. He had doubted Nomi at first. He had thought she was a dreamer, a scientist with her head in the clouds. He had been wrong. 6 months later, the first true warships of the human defense fleet launched from orbital shipyards that had been constructed in secret over the past decade. They were not as large as Vreth vessels, not as powerful as Vreth weapons, but they were armed with quantum field generators, with zero-point energy reactors, with shields that could turn aside any attack. Nomi watched the launch from the observation deck of Station Unity, humanity's new home in orbit above Earth. Behind her stood representatives from every nation on the planet, united for the first time in history by a common purpose. What happens now? asked the Secretary General standing beside her. Kala smiled. Now we go out there, she said, pointing at the stars. Now we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as builders, as protectors, as a species that will never again cower in fear. The ships accelerated away from Earth, their engines blazing with blue fire, their shields shimmering with golden light. They were small and fragile compared to the vastness of space, but they carried something that the Vreth Collective had never understood. They carried hope. In the village in Kenya where Kala had grown up, children gathered around a small television set to watch the launch. One of them, a young girl with bright eyes and quick hands, looked at the ship soaring into the darkness and felt something stir in her heart. "Someday," she whispered, "I'm going to build something like that." Her grandmother smiled and put a hand on her shoulder. "Someday, little one, you might build something even better." The Vreth Collective would return. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more moments when humanity's survival hung by a thread. But Nomi had given her species something precious: time. Time to learn, time to grow, time to become something greater than they had ever been before. And when the Vreth finally returned, 3 years later with a fleet 10 times the size of the first, they found not a primitive species cowering on a single world. They found an alliance of human colonies spanning a dozen moons and asteroids. They found a fleet of warships that could match them blow for blow. They found a species that had taken the worst the galaxy could offer and transformed it into strength. They found humanity. And for the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the Vreth Collective fled. Nomi stood calm as she watched them go, the same way she had stood calm when their weapons first collided against Earth's indestructible walls. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with the weight of years. But her eyes were still steady, still determined, still filled with the same fire that had driven her to protect her world. "Dr. Nomi," Tors said, standing beside her as he had so many times before. "They're running, we did it." Kala shook her head slowly. "No, General, we didn't do it. Humanity did it. All 8 billion of us working together, refusing to give up." She turned away from the screens and walked toward the door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the next generation of engineers. There's still so much work to do." She paused at the door and looked back one last time. "The walls held," she said softly, "just like I promised they would." Then she was gone, leaving behind a world that was finally ready to take its place among the stars.